Today, we're going to break down the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. It's a story about a single gunshot that kicked off a massive 33-hour manhunt and really pushed an already divided country right to the edge.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is September 10th, 2025. We're on the campus of Utah Valley University. It started out as a pretty normal day, but, it was not going to end that way.
What was supposed to be a political rally, well, it turned into a crime scene in the blink of an eye. Kirk was there hosting one of his signature Prove Me Wrong debates. These events were a huge part of his campus tours, and this one drew a pretty big crowd. We're talking about 3,000 people gathered in an outdoor amphitheater. But this explainer, it's about so much more than just that one tragic moment. This is really the story of the incredibly intense 33 hours that came after the shot. A nationwide manhunt that had the entire country glued to their screens and, frankly, at each other's throats. So first, let's just dig into the attack itself. We're calling this section the shot on campus because it really was a single moment that silenced one of the biggest voices on the political right. So for anyone who might not know, who exactly was Charlie Kirk? Well, at 31, he was the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a super influential conservative organization. He was also a really close ally of President Donald Trump. I mean, his ability to get young conservatives fired up made him a genuine driving force in American politics. And the attack itself, it was just chillingly precise. Okay, so look at this timeline. 11:52 a.m. The gunman gets on campus and finds a spot on the roof of a building called the Lucy Center. At noon sharp, Kirk's event kicks off. Then, 23 minutes later, a single shot from 142 yards away. And just 1 minute after that, the shooter is off the roof and gone, disappearing into the woods. This was planned down to the minute. The pure horror of that moment is really captured in this quote from a reporter who was right there, Emma Pitts. She said, "I just saw so much blood come out of the left side of Charlie's neck, and then he went limp." I mean, it's just such a raw, brutal description of what people saw on the ground. That single shot immediately triggered a massive response, which brings us to the second part of our story, the 33-hour manhunt. This was a nationwide search that honestly put the entire country on edge. You can tell how intense this search was right from the get-go. The FBI immediately slapped a $100,000 reward on the table for any information leading to an arrest. That right there tells you just how high-profile this case was from the very start. Pretty quickly, the authorities had a name for their suspect, Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old local and a former student at the university. Later on, a family member told investigators that Robinson had gotten a lot more political and was really open about how much he disliked Charlie Kirk and everything he stood for. So, investigators started piecing things together with some key evidence they found near the scene. They had a Mauser-type rifle, palm and forearm prints from the edge of the roof, a footprint from a pair of Converse, and, this is the weird part, bullet casings with strange messages actually carved into them. And these inscriptions, okay, this is where the story just gets bizarre. It was this strange cocktail of internet brain rot and political statements. You've got a furry meme, a video game cheat code from Helldivers 2, lyrics from the famous anti-fascist song Bella Ciao, and then just a juvenile taunt. It's a really, really weird glimpse into the mind of the person who did this. The manhunt didn't end in some big police shootout. It ended because of a family intervention. A tip from a family member who said Robinson had confessed got the ball rolling. Then, Robinson's own dad saw his son's picture on the news and confronted him. In the end, his father and a pastor talked him into surrendering. And just like that, the 33-hour chase was over. But the arrest? That was really just the beginning of the fallout. So let's look at what happened next, because the nation's reaction was all over the place. We saw grief, we saw calls for unity, and we saw a lot of demands for retribution. The country's reaction was immediate, and it was just completely fractured. On one side, you had these furious calls for revenge. President Trump immediately blamed the radical left. You had commentators like Jesse Waters vowing to avenge Charlie's death. But on the other side, there was a real push for unity. Former presidents, top Democrats, they all condemned the violence and basically begged Americans to come together instead of pointing fingers. And out of all that chaos, Kirk's widow, Erica, gave this incredibly powerful first address. Her message was totally defiant. She said, "The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. The movement my husband built will not die. It will become stronger."
But that feeling of grief and strength, it was not universal, not by a long shot. And to really get how deep the division was, just look at this post from a restaurant owner in Cincinnati. It's jarring to see these two things side by side, and it shows you just how far apart people were. So, why does all of this matter? Well, because this assassination didn't happen in a vacuum. And that brings us to our last section, a political violence crisis. We have to look at how this event fits into a really dangerous and, frankly, scary trend. The governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, I think he summed it up perfectly with this statement. "I absolutely believe this is a watershed in American history." He wasn't just seeing it as an isolated tragedy, but as a potential turning point for the whole country. And Governor Cox had good reason to say that. Just look at the pattern. Kirk's assassination was just the latest in a string of politically motivated attacks that had happened over the last year. Shootings of lawmakers, killings of embassy staff, arson, even assassination attempts on a president. It's a disturbing list. Which brings us right back to what Governor Cox said. He called it a watershed moment. And that leaves us with the one final, really big question we all have to think about. If it's a turning point, what exactly are we turning toward?